Let's jump into this deep dive you sent over. Skateboarding, huh? And a company called Globe International. You've got some fascinating articles here and some info from Globe's website. I'm intrigued, to be honest. Like, how do those two things even connect?
No, it all starts with that DIY spirit, you know. Your sources mentioned it all began with surfers in California back in the 40s, looking for something to do when the waves were flat.
Makes sense. No waves. Okay, we'll make our own fun, right? Love that.
Hmm.
But I gotta ask, those first skateboards, we're talking wooden boxes, planks, whatever they could find, roller skate wheels slapped on. Could you even picture trying to ride one of those things?
It's mind-blowing, isn't it? That something so basic could spark, well, a global phenomenon. And it's fascinating to see how even those early manufactured boards, like roller derby, Duraflex surfer, how the designs changed based on what tricks were becoming possible.
Yeah, design following function.
Hmm.
And by the 60s, skateboarding was exploding. TV shows, Surf's Up magazines, the Quarterly Skateboarder. Wow, a whole magazine for this.
Hmm.
It was definitely more than just a hobby at that point, a whole cultural movement.
Oh, absolutely. And you can really see that connection to surf culture. Even the name sidewalk surfing says it all, right? Interesting, though, this was mainly happening in the US. Globe International, as we'll get to, started way over in Australia. Completely different scene.
That's right, Globe's got those Aussie roots.
Mm-hmm.
But before we get there, let's stick with skateboarding's story for a bit. The 70s, that's when things get really interesting. 1972 urethane wheels, game changer.
Huge. I mean, think about it. Before that, you had metal or clay wheels. Clunky, noisy, barely any grip. Urethane, totally different. Smoother ride, way better grip. Suddenly, skaters could do things that were impossible before.
So it wasn't just a small improvement. It was like, okay, everything is different now.
Yeah.
Like going from a tricycle to, I don't know, a high-performance mountain bike or something.
Perfect analogy. And right around the same time, you have the rise of the Z-Boys. This group of skaters out of Dogtown, California, completely changed how people saw skateboarding. Aggressive, low to the ground, fearless. They weren't just riding, they were attacking the pavement.
Totally. And they didn't care about boundaries or conventions.
Yeah.
It's wild how they took something that started as just a chill pastime and turned it into, I don't know, a form of self-expression, rebellion even.
Exactly. And that change in style and attitude, it led to new spaces too,
Yeah.
skate parks. Places like Skateboard City in Florida, Carlsbad Skate Park in California. These became havens for skaters to experiment, practice, push the limits.
Man, I can only imagine the energy in those early skate parks. All that creativity swirling around, new tricks being born. Crazy to think, while all this is happening in the U.S., Globe International is getting its start over in Australia. Totally different scene, but connected to that same skate culture.
Exactly. Globe born out of that same passion for skateboarding. But yeah, different vibe, different place. It'll be really interesting to see how their story weaves into all of this. And as skateboarding hits the 80s, things really take off. We see two distinct styles emerge: vert ramp skating and street skating. Both pushing the limits, but in different ways.
Okay, help me out here. Vert and street. I hear those terms all the time, but I'm not sure I fully get it. What's the difference?
Think of vert skating as those huge vertical ramps, half pipes, it's all about getting air, defying gravity, spins, flips. Tony Hawk, he's like the vert guy. Push it to a whole other level. Street skating, though, that's about using your surroundings, the urban landscape, stairs, railings, benches, anything you can find.
So vert is about airtime, big tricks, and street is more about using your environment creatively.
Exactly. And both styles had their icons, right? You mentioned Tony Hawk for vert, but on the street side, you've got Rodney Mullen, known for his incredible technical skills, inventing tricks that seemed impossible.
Oh, yeah. I remember those skateboarding videos back then. So influential. And it wasn't just the tricks, it was the whole vibe, the music, the attitude. It was like you were getting a peek into a whole other world.
And speaking of the 80s skate scene, this is when Globe International really comes into its own. Remember, they're way over in Australia, but they're tapping into that same energy that's fueling skateboarding's growth globally.
Right, Globe International. Founded in '84 by the Hill brothers. That our company page you sent over, it says they were skaters themselves. I wonder, do you think that gave them an edge, knowing the scene from the inside?
For sure. They knew exactly what skaters wanted. In terms of performance, style, they were all about quality and innovation from the beginning. And it shows in their early stuff, like their decks and shoes. Quickly gained a following.
So while the U.S. had vert, street, guys like Tony Hawk and Rodney Mullen, the Hill brothers are building something special down in Australia. It's like these two stories running parallel, both feeding into this bigger skateboarding narrative.
Yeah, love that. And then the 90s hit. Skateboarding keeps evolving, gets even more technical, and then, bam, the X Games show up. Suddenly, skateboarding is mainstream.
X Games.
Mm.
Man, I used to watch those. Just blown away by what these skaters could do. It finally felt like skateboarding was getting recognized as like a legitimate sport.
Yeah, you had guys like Daewon Song pushing street skating in crazy new ways. And the X Games, it was a stage for them to show off their skills to the world. A huge moment for skateboarding. And Globe International is right there with it, expanding globally, sponsoring events. They're a serious force in the industry now.
And they're branching out too, right? It's not just decks and shoes anymore. It looks like they started diversifying their brands in the late 90s, even acquired their own manufacturing base in 2002. Interesting move. Well, what was the thinking there, do you think?
Probably about controlling quality,
Right.
meeting demand. Owning their own factories gave them more control over the whole process, design to production.
Smart. They weren't just riding the wave, they were shaping it. So by the early 2000s, skateboarding is huge. Globe International is this multi-brand company with a global reach. What happens next?
Well, the 2000s see a whole new generation of superstars, Paul Rodriguez, Nigel Houston. These guys are incredible. Skate parks are everywhere now. Skateboarding is truly a global thing. It's seeped into pop culture, fashion, music, movies, video games.
It was everywhere you looked. And Globe International is right there, expanding brands, supporting skaters around the world. They're not just a skateboarding company anymore. They're a lifestyle brand. So skateboarding, it's this global force, new stars all the time. Globe International, they're right there in the thick of it. But what's really impressive to me is they didn't just ride that wave of popularity, they helped build it, contributed to the whole thing.
Definitely. Their focus on quality, innovation, that pushed the sport forward, no doubt. But there's something else about Globe International that I think is really cool. Their commitment to social responsibility. It's a big deal in the skate community these days.
Yeah. Our company page, they talk a lot about that. Sustainability, community stuff. What are they actually doing in those areas?
Well, on the environmental side, they're using eco-friendly materials, thinking about ways to lessen their impact. They get it.
Hmm.
Skaters, they're connected to their environment. They want to protect it.
It's like that saying, take only memories, leave only footprints. Skaters, they live that, right? Respect
Yeah.
the spaces you use.
Totally. And it's not just about the environment. Globe International, they're involved in community stuff too, supporting local skate scenes, giving back. It's not just about profits for them. It's about making a difference.
And then, of course, skateboarding in the Olympics. 2020. Can you imagine? Those early sidewalk surfers, what would they think? Skateboarding on the world stage.
Amazing, right? Shows how far it's come. From those humble beginnings to, well, a globally recognized sport. Opens up so many opportunities for skaters too.
Speaking of those early days, it's kind of wild to me that Globe International, they started decades after skateboarding began. But they're so connected to the culture now. How'd they pull that off?
I think it comes back to what we said before. Founded by skaters, for skaters, they understood the scene, the needs, the values, and they've stayed true to that, even as they've grown.
Yeah, they've managed to honor the past, but also embrace the future, respect the roots, but keep pushing forward. And that focus on sustainability, social responsibility, that shows they get what matters to skaters today.
It's a great example of how a company can become a part of something bigger, more than just a brand. They're part of skateboarding culture, period.
So wrapping up this deep dive, what really sticks with you? What's your big takeaway?
To me, it's how skateboarding has always been about pushing boundaries.
Right.
Whether it's the tricks, the style, or even just challenging expectations. It's a sport that's always changing, reinventing itself, inspiring creativity. And Globe International, they've been a huge part of that.
Love it. Great way to put it. This deep dive has been awesome. It's mind-blowing how something that started as like, hey, let's mimic surfing on land has turned into this global phenomenon, its own culture, Olympic dreams, and a company like Globe International right there at the heart of it. Thanks for taking this ride with me. It's been a blast.